I was only 13 when I began to fear silence, and it wasn't by chance. My name is Isef, and I grew up in a small Muslim village where dust seemed to cover everything around us. Our sandals, our water jugs, even the air we breathed. At home, silence was an invisible rule governed by fear. My father had a voice that brooked no challenge. When he spoke, no one dared interrupt. It was as if even the air bowed before him. He had a long black beard with grey streaks and calloused hands, not from the daily tasks, but from the weight of hard work, beatings, and holding the stick he used to command respect and control. I remember how he said, "A good son obeys before he even understands," and I obeyed. My mother, on the other hand, was a shadow who barely looked up. She cooked, cleaned, and hid her face with dry, cracked hands like earth parched by the sun. I never remember seeing her smile, only silence and a constant trembling. I grew up learning the Quran by candlelight, sitting on the dirt floor, rocking back and forth with other boys, repeating Arabic words I didn't understand. Obedience was instilled in me so deeply that deep down, I could barely breathe. My father said, "Better a dead son than a disobedient one." And so a part of me died early, too early. I longed for something different, for kindness, for someone to look at me and say, "I see you, Isef. You matter." But no one did. The mosque taught me discipline. My father, fear, and my mother, silence. And I carried these invisible chains, feeling trapped. If you've ever grown up feeling invisible, wanting love, and being told nothing but rules, you might understand what I mean. My childhood wasn't like other children's. It was more like training in submission, in carrying the weight of family honor, in being the perfect son. I remember one night when I was about 7. I stumbled in Arabic during the Quran recitation, and my father hit me so hard that I fell to the floor, my lip bleeding. My mother saw it but did nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the pot she was stirring, as if to say, "It's not my business." That night in silence, I whispered to the sky, "Allah, are you there? Do you see me?" But only silence answered. The years passed and my body grew. My shoulders became broader, but inside I remained small, crushed and hungry for something I couldn't name. Then everything changed. My father, who seemed invincible, suddenly fell ill. It started with a cough, fever and weakness. He didn't want to admit it. He continued to yell and hit us, but his voice grew weaker, his steps slower. One morning, I woke to a sound I'd never heard before. My father groaning in pain, lying on the floor, clutching his chest. My mother stood beside him, praying softly, helpless. The imam came, recited verses and sprinkled holy water, but to no avail. Within a few weeks, the strong man who ruled our household could no longer stand to pray. His once thunderous voice had become a harsh whisper. His once steady hand trembled when he tried to hold a cup. And then he was gone. No long goodbyes, no words of love, just silence. I was 12. My brothers cried. My mother broke down in sobs I had never seen before, and I felt empty, lost, terrified. Because if that man who seemed invincible could die, what would be left for me? That same night, awake and alone, I whispered once more to the sky, "Allah, do you see me now? Do you even care?" But as before, I received only silence in response. I didn't know it then. But my father's death marked not only the end of his reign in the house, it was the beginning of something even darker, something that would test me in ways I could never have imagined. Before I continue, I have a request for you. If stories like mine, of people trapped in silence and searching for the truth, touch your heart, subscribe to this channel, like, comment, and share this video. Not for me, but for everyone who still lives imprisoned by fear. Your simple gesture could be the key to freeing someone. Because I was still trapped, and the lock on my cage was beginning to close. The days after my father's death were a whirlwind of confusion. The village whispered about honor, obedience, and above all, who would assume the role of head of the family. Everyone looked to me. I was the eldest son, the heir to the name, the one supposed to carry it all forward. But how could a broken, scared boy bear the weight of a man I never truly understood? Still, I tried. I prayed more fervently. I fasted longer. I recited the Quran with a precision that bordered on desperation. All to prove my worth, to deserve a love I'd never felt. But the love never came. Only the anticipation, the crushing pressure, the shadows that consumed me. Until one night changed everything. The sun had already set, turning the village an almost bloody red when my uncle came to visit. He sat beside me, his heavy hand resting on my shoulder, and spoke in a soft but venomous voice. "Isef, your father is gone. You are the man of the house now. You must take care of your mother, in every way." At first, I didn't understand what he meant. His icy smile sent chills down my spine. The imam nodded beside him, and my mother remained motionless, her eyes downcast, silent as ever. That's when everything became clear. They weren't talking about protection or care. They were talking about something more, something unthinkable. My blood ran cold. My stomach churned. I wanted to scream, but no words came out. At that moment, I realized that the silence that marked my childhood was about to transform into the silence of my soul. After my father died, I imagined the house would feel lighter, that the weight of his fists, his booming voice, his endless commands would finally dissipate. But the house grew darker. The silence grew even heavier. My mother's sobs gave way to a constant silence, that suffocating silence you carry in your chest but never let go. My brothers looked at me differently. There were questions in their eyes that I didn't know how to answer. I was only 12 years old, but suddenly they looked at me like I was a man. The imam and the elders wasted no time. They came to our house, sat cross-legged on mats, drinking tea, stroking their beards. They spoke words I barely understood. Honor, obedience, responsibility. They looked right at me and said, "Isef, your father is gone. You are the man now. You must lead, you must protect, you must carry on his name." Protect what? Carry what weight? I was just a boy. A boy lost in the middle of a storm that no one seemed to want to ease, but no one cared. I tried to be strong, tried to cling to faith with all my might. I prayed until my throat burned. I memorized longer surahs, reciting them in the silence of the night until I lost my voice. But it never seemed enough. No matter how much I prayed, Allah's silence swallowed me whole, like a vast cold void. And then came the stairs. The men of the village no longer saw me as a boy. To them I was a project, a responsibility, the vessel of my father's legacy. The women whispered as they passed me. Some cast pitying glances at my mother, shaking their heads silently. We seemed like an interrupted story, a book with blank pages waiting for someone to write the ending. My mother changed too. She became smaller, if that was possible. Her shoulders hunched even more. Her eyes remained fixed on the ground. She barely spoke. It was as if, with my father's death, her voice had died too. But in the shadows, something even more cruel was beginning to grow. My uncle started showing up more often. At first, I thought he was being kind. He'd sometimes bring food, tell stories about my father, how respected and feared he was. He'd tell me I needed to be like him, that I should become a lion. He'd squeeze my shoulder with heavy hands, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But there was something cold and calculating about that smile. Soon the comments began, small and subtle at first. "Your mother is still young. A woman needs a man's protection. It's your duty to care for her." I didn't quite understand, trying to deny to myself that he meant it. But then one night after the mosque, he pulled me aside. His breath smelled of strong tea, and his words cut into my soul like knives. "Isef, your father is gone. You have to fulfill his role, even for your mother." My chest tightened. My hands trembled. I looked at him, hoping it was a cruel joke, a misunderstanding. But he didn't smile. His eyes were too serious. I wanted to scream, "This is evil, this is disgusting." But the words stuck, choked inside me. The imam was nearby, and to my dismay, he didn't correct my uncle. He didn't scold him. He just stroked his beard and nodded slowly, as if this were a sacred teaching, an immutable truth. I looked at my mother, who was sitting inside, her hands busy sewing. She didn't look up, didn't say anything. And that silence was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. She knew. She'd heard those whispers before, and she no longer had the strength to fight them. Something inside me broke at that moment. I was supposed to become my father. I was supposed to do what he did, attack, dominate, desecrate. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was collapsing. That night, as I lay on my rug staring at the ceiling, my body trembled. The shadows of the lantern danced on the walls as if mocking me, laughing at my pain, suffocating me. The words repeated in my head, "Do your part even for your mother. No, no, no." I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block it out. But the words were already embedded in my bones. And here's the thing. When an entire community, your own family, even the imam at the mosque starts telling you something is your duty, a part of you starts to doubt. Is this really true? Is this really what Allah expects of me? I hated myself for thinking this way, for letting this question enter my mind. But I was drowning. I was just a boy, and everyone around me told me this was honor. This was obedience. This was Islam. I remember whispering into the darkness of the night once again, "Allah, do you see me? Is this what you want from me?" And once again I heard only silence. A silence that to me was more frightening than any scream. If you've ever been pressured into doing something your heart told you was wrong, if you've ever been told that sin was sacred, that abuse was love, that slavery was freedom, perhaps you understand what I felt in that moment. I was trapped, not only in my home, in the village, but within my own soul. The year after my father's death was a year of shadows. Shadows of sadness, confusion, and whispers that twisted my stomach. Every time my uncle came, I felt his eyes watching me, judging me. Every sermon the imam gave about obedience seemed tailored just for me. Every time my mother looked away, I felt even more alone. And inside, something in me was breaking. I didn't know it yet, but those shadows were about to become much denser because the darkest night was coming. The night the unthinkable would be said aloud. The night my world, my faith, my identity, and my soul would crumble under the weight of betrayal, and nothing would ever be the same. That night, the lantern burned dimly, and the room smelled of dust and stale tea. The walls seemed to listen. The floor seemed to hold its breath. My uncle sat cross-legged, his robe neatly arranged, his eyes hard as stones in a dry riverbed. The imam was there too, stroking his beard silently, letting the silence do the work. My mother huddled in a corner, hands in her lap, eyes fixed on the cotton rug she had stared at throughout the wedding. Isef, my uncle began, his voice soft and experienced. It's been a year since your father returned to Allah. You are a man now, the man of this house. I nodded, because that's what boys like me did. Nod, obey, disappear. He leaned forward. A man protects what is his. He feels what is missing. He assumes all the duties his father left behind. All the duties. 2 words fell heavily on my stomach. He continued talking about honor, purity, and the shame a family feels when it doesn't stay together. He spoke slowly, each word like a seed he wanted to plant inside me. The imam said nothing, just nodded his head at the right moments, as if he were approving each sentence. I wish someone would laugh. I wish someone would say, "We're just testing you, Isef. We want to see if you understand your responsibilities." I wanted my mother to stand up, say enough, shout enough, but no one laughed. No one moved. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "I'm going to work," he said quickly without thinking much. "I'll bring food, I'll fix the roof, I will." My uncle interrupted me with a click of his tongue, calm, almost polite. "It's not just money." The room seemed to shrink. The air grew thick, dense. My ears rang. I could hear my own heart beating, loud, desperate, trapped. I don't want to repeat what he said after that. Certain things, certain horrors don't deserve to be echoed. They shouldn't live in other mouths. He twisted religion until it bent like iron in a fire. He piled words about obedience, duty, honor, and family like stones around a tomb. He clothed sin in a sacred cloak and called it purity. He made filth a commandment. And then the imam finally spoke. "The community is watching." 4 words. 4 words were enough to strangle a boy. I looked at my mother. She didn't look back. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her mouth, once a timid thread of murmured words, was now a thin line of surrender. The woman who taught me to be silent had been destroyed by her own stillness. I wanted to scream her name. I wanted to run to her and say, "Mom, let's go anywhere. We'll sleep on the floor, eat whatever we can. I'll carry water, I'll fetch firewood. Just say the word." But she didn't say. And in that silence, something inside me broke. It was a subtle break. Not a snap, not a scream, but like a bone cracking beneath the skin. Silent, deep, irreversible. "Never," I whispered. My uncle smiled. A smile that sounded like the sound of a door being locked. "You will not bring shame to your father's name," he said. And I answered before I even thought, "My father's name shames me." My voice trembled, my legs too, but the words came out true. And truth has legs of its own. The imam's eyes hardened. "Careful, boy." "I'm careful," I replied, my throat burning. "Being careful is not calling darkness light." My uncle leaned back, sizing me up. "You think you know more than your elders, more than the imam?" "No," I replied. "I just know that being a mother isn't a chore. She's my mother. She's not a duty. She's a human being." He waved his hand as if swatting away a fly. "Western language, sentimental lies. We're talking about honor." Honor. The word tasted like iron in my mouth. It was then that my mother made a sound. Not a word, just a sound. Small, cracking, like a pot breaking after years of facing too much heat. I turned to her. His eyes for a brief second met mine, and in them I saw deserts, oceans, and the weight of years I hadn't even lived yet. But then the eyes returned to the ground, and the oceans dried up again. Something inside me screamed, but my lips remained sealed, because boys like me had been trained to swallow screams. "If you refuse," my uncle said, "the community will know. They will talk. They will judge. Your mother will be left unprotected. It will be your fault." The imam added in a deep voice, "And Allah will judge the negligence of a son." They were building an altar in front of me, and they wanted me to climb on it and bleed. So for anyone listening right now, let me tell you something. Yes, yourself. If someone tries to push you into sin with words of pity, if someone tries to dress abuse in the garb of honor, if someone calls duty what wounds your spirit, you have permission to run. You have the right to say no. You have an obligation to protect what is sacred, refusing what is wicked. I got up. My legs felt like logs of wood, but they were firm. I said never. My uncle's smile faded. The room suddenly grew cold. "Sit down," he ordered. But I didn't sit down. For the first time in my life, I obeyed. He reached out to grab my wrist. I collected. He stood up. The imam stood up with him. The shadows fell over me like a cloth thrown over a cage trying to extinguish the light. Think carefully, Isef, said the Imam. The eyes of men are upon your house. Their eyes silently accused me, as if the walls themselves were judging my refusal. The angels record everything, my uncle said. The shame of a house without a head is too great. I felt nausea rise. The bitter taste of the guilt they tried to place on me burned in my throat, but even so I swallowed hard and said, then let them record it. But let them record this too. I will not become the sin that killed my father's soul. It didn't even seem like those words came from me. It was as if someone stronger, freer, had spoken for me. My uncle's eyes widened. His face changed, as if something dark was stirring beneath his skin. Blasphemy, he spat. You've always been ungrateful. Your father was even kind to you. And for a second everything spun. I was 7 years old again. The Quran open in my hands, trying to pronounce a verse my childish mouth couldn't understand. My father's heavy hands slashing my face, the taste of blood mixed with dust. My mother turning to the stove as if she hadn't seen anything. And the silence, always the silence, coiling around me as if it were God. I blinked hard. I came back to the present. I'm leaving, I murmured. I said no. But my uncle leaned in, insistent. You will stay and you will listen. I've listened all my life, I retorted. Then obey. I've obeyed all my life. His scent was a mixture of stale tea and something rotten. Your father's place needs filling, he said. But it was never filled with love, I replied firmly. And I will not fill it with filth. He hit me. I don't remember the movement, only the muffled sound of the impact, the heat rising in my face, my mother's soft moan, that same sound like the song of a bird being crushed. The Imam said nothing. Silence once again fell on their side, but I wouldn't accept it. I wiped the blood from my mouth with my sleeve. I'll work, I said. I'll bring food, fix the roof, protect the house. But I won't become a wolf to protect it from the wolves. The Imam finally spoke. You're defying Allah. And without thinking, I replied, no, I'm defying you, and may God bless that. My uncle tried to grab me. I recoiled, hitting the cracked walls of the room. The plaster scraped my shoulder. The lantern shook in the wind. Everything around me seemed to lean forward, waiting for my next breath. And then, with an impulse I didn't even know existed within me, I ran. I left that house like someone escaping from a prison. I passed the well, the fig tree, the place where boys played at being men with sticks and made up stories. Sand sank beneath my feet. The stones cut me. The moon was my only witness, pale and indifferent. Behind me, their voices boomed. My uncle screamed. The Imam called to me like someone casting a curse. And my mother finally spoke. Her scream rose, split the air, and broke my chest along with it. But I kept running, because sometimes the most sacred act a boy can do is run away. I ran until there were no more houses, no trails, no paths. The world turned to brush, then darkness. My lungs burned, my legs felt like stones. I vomited onto the sand, unable to stand. Allah, I whispered breathlessly. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Are you real? And once again, what I received was the same silence as always. The same silence that enveloped me when my father beat me. The same silence that surrounded my mother as she faded into silence. The same silence that reigned in the mosque like a king. I knelt, the cold sand sticking to my knees. The night swallowed me whole. I wanted to peel off my skin, crawl out of my bones, disappear. And then I screamed to the sky, not as one praying, but as one demanding an answer. If you're real, then show me. Or kill me. But don't leave me like this. And all I heard was the wind rustling through the bushes. A distant barking. No answer. All that remained was the distant murmur of that village. The same one that had already decided for me who I should be. I lay down on the earth. It was hard, cold, but honest. It didn't promise me salvation in exchange for my soul. It didn't try to convince me that violence was virtue or that silence was faith. It was just earth. And for the first time, it felt safer than the arms of any religious man. Perhaps you know this place. The place where the men you were taught to trust become the reason for your anguish. Where words like honor become blades that cut deep. Where duty becomes a prison and no one asks if your conscience survived. It's the place where you'd rather die whole than live broken. If you're listening to this, I want you to know. Your no isn't rebellion. It's protection. It's heaven's answer to men's lies. I waited in that field for an answer that never came. At least not then. Time passed slowly. At some point, the sky began to lighten. A grey hue cut across the horizon and a single bird sang, as if unaware of what men had done with the night. I stood there trembling. I refused to sell my soul for a place at the table where women are bargaining chips and children become soldiers of sins they didn't choose. I took a step, then another. And even without knowing where to go, I walked. The sun rose with a thin blade behind the mountains. Behind me, the village was waking, but ahead of me, there was a different silence. It wasn't yet peace, but it was mine. Later, wandering aimlessly, I found a small mosque. It was empty. I pushed open the door and entered as if invading my own despair. I whispered, "If you are God, say something." But the ceiling remained silent. The walls only watched me. I curled up on the cold floor, and between sleep and exhaustion I felt something strange. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't an answer. It was a presence. Something there, close enough to touch my breath, but too far away to give me certainty. I was exhausted. My body felt borrowed, as if it no longer belonged to me. I spent the night there, lying on the mosque floor, my bones pressing against the stone, my eyes dry from waiting. I had run until I lost all strength, screamed until my throat gave out, and now all that remained was the sound of my breathing. The sky once again fell silent, but it wasn't the same silence I knew. It was a silence that seemed to be waiting for something from me. Do you know that kind of silence? The one that speaks without words? The one that weighs more than the loudest scream? The one that seems to be pushing you somewhere, even if you don't yet know where. I closed my eyes and spoke, almost voicelessly. "Allah, do you see me?" Nothing. Then the call to prayer cut through the air. The muezzin's voice was strong, steady, and familiar. My body responded reflexively. I stood up. I made the movements. My forehead touched the ground as it had so many times before, but inside I was empty. Each word of the prayer felt like stone in my mouth. My lips moved, but my soul was not there. Everything ached. Every memory tightened my chest. Every verse I recited was a rope tightening around me. I remembered my father, the surah I'd messed up, the slap that came before I could correct it, the blood on my lip and the prayer I'd said that night. "Allah, stop him." But he didn't. Not once. I remembered crying silently, hidden under a thin blanket, begging, "Allah, don't let him come today." But the footsteps always came. The belt always came. And silence always won. Now, with everything that had happened, with what my uncle demanded, with what the imam allowed, with my mother's blank stare, I cried out for help once more. And once again, nothing. I left the mosque with my heart pounding like a broken drum. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something worse. Absence. It was as if God were close enough for me to miss him, but too far away for me to reach him. The sun scorched the ground beneath my feet. Children ran through the dust, laughing, kicking pebbles between the piles of dried goat dung. A woman passed by carrying jars larger than her shoulders could hold, larger even than the hope she still tried to hide behind her face. I watched it all in silence, and inside a question consumed me. Does God only see men in robes, those who walk with beards, sticks, and stones in their hands? Does he turn his face away when boys are broken inside and mothers disappear behind empty eyes? I wanted to scream in the street, to tear the sky apart with my voice. But no. Instead, I swallowed the rising fire and let it burn inside my chest. That night was unbearable. My body was exhausted, but my soul, it still moved. It moved inside me as if refusing to accept rest. The walls of the hut where I had hidden seemed to be shrinking, wanting to crush me with the same silence that had accompanied me since I was a boy. I pressed my hands against my face and whispered, "If you're there, God, why are you silent?" But the silence only deepened. Then I thought, maybe God hated me. Maybe he'd rejected me from birth. After all, why else was I born with fear? Why did I grow up carrying obligation instead of love? Why do the men who claim to represent him use his name to crush the weak? The weight tightened my chest as if every breath were a war. And my mind screamed, "End this." Anything seemed better than that life. I fell asleep like that, clutching despair as if it were the only blanket I had left. And then I dreamed. I was in a well. My feet were sunk in mud, the smell of rot rising like smoke. I tried to climb the walls, to climb out, to escape, but the earth crumbled in my hands. It was too deep, too dark, and I was dirty, covered in shame, fear, and memories I wanted to forget. Then I heard it. Not a scream, not an order. I heard my name spoken tenderly. Not the way my father shouted, not the way my uncle spat. It was different, soft and strong at the same time, like the sound of clear water running between stones. Yusef. I looked up. Someone was there. A man dressed in white. And there was light around him, but it wasn't the kind that blinded. It was a light that embraced, a light that warmed. His eyes met mine, and I knew he knew. He knew everything. The beatings, the fear, the shame, the years of begging for a sign, the demand to destroy my soul in the name of duty. He knew. And yet, he didn't look away. He didn't reject me. There was love in his gaze. Then he reached out his hand. His white sleeve touched the edge of the well, and his voice reached me like balm. "You are not impure. You are mine." My body froze. My heart trembled. Could this be real? Someone so clean calling me close? Wanting me? I hesitated, caught between fear and shame, but he didn't withdraw his hand. It remained there, waiting, inviting. And then my soul leaped. My arm lifted. Our fingers met. and the instant he touched me, the mud dried. The well vanished. I was standing on solid ground, clean light. He was beside me, so close that I felt the warmth of his presence, but it wasn't a burning fire. It was a healing fire. I fell to my knees weeping like a child. He touched my shoulder firmly and tenderly and said only this, "You are loved." I woke choking on my own sobs. My chest heaved as if something had been ripped from inside me. My hands clutched the thin carpet, my cheeks soaked. But something had changed. The silence was no longer empty. It felt full, as if someone were in the room with me. I whispered, almost without realizing it, the only name that came to mind. Jesus. The name burned my lips. It was forbidden, dangerous, but it was the first time a word brought me peace instead of fear. Saying his name in that house felt like blasphemy, but inside me it felt like life. I stayed there until dawn, repeating his name softly. Jesus. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like rejection. It didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace, and peace was something I'd never truly known. The next day, my heart pounding between curiosity and fear, I knew I had to understand. Had it all just been a dream? Was it madness? Or were there more people like me? I waited for the house to fall silent, grabbed a borrowed phone, an old one, the screen cracked, the keyboard nearly worn, and with trembling fingers typed, "Muslim sees man in white in dream." And then my life turned upside down. What I found in that simple search was an entire world I hadn't even known existed. Testimonies of people like me, from countries similar to mine, speaking with familiar accents, wearing clothes like my mother's, and all telling the same story. They saw a man in white, and this man called them by name. And they knew. It was Jesus. I watched videos. I read stories. I heard voices. And one of them froze me. A woman with tears in her eyes said, "I was a Muslim. I did everything right. But in a dream, Jesus appeared to me. He said, 'I am the way, the truth, and the life.' And then I knew. For the first time, I felt loved. Not used, not silenced. Loved. That word shot through me like an arrow. Loved. No one had ever said that to me with sincerity. Not my father, not my uncle, and not my mother, who was too broken to say anything. That night, I dreamed again. The well was gone. In its place, I was in a narrow alley with dark walls rising around me. Heavy chains bound my feet. I tried to move, but they cut into my ankles. Blood flowed. The pain was real. But then the same voice. "Yusuf." I looked ahead. There he was, the man in white, his arm raised, and the instant his hand pointed toward me, the chain snapped and fell. "Follow me," he said. I woke with my body in shock, tears streaming, my heart racing as if I just escaped from a prison that had held me forever. I wanted to scream his name to the world, Jesus, but my throat closed, because I knew what would happen if anyone heard me. I knew what it meant to be caught watching it, reading it, believing it. It meant death. And yet, I continued, in secrecy, at night, with headphones on like someone hiding contraband, until it happened. One night, I was watching a testimony from a man imprisoned in Pakistan. He said Jesus had appeared in his cell. He said, "Even here I haven't been forgotten." And that's when I realized I hadn't been forgotten either. But I didn't hear the door open, or the footsteps. I only felt the shadow. It was my mother. She stopped right behind me. Her eyes fell on the screen. The word Jesus shone there in the reflection. She froze, her mouth parted, soundless. Then suddenly she snatched the phone from my hand, pressed it to her chest and whispered, almost panicked, "Do you want to die, Yusuf?" Her hand trembled. Her eyes darted from the screen to the window as if she feared the entire village was listening. She grabbed me by the shoulders, not in anger, but in terror, like a woman who knew what men were capable of doing to someone like me. My mother looked at me with dread written all over her face. "If they find out, they'll burn you. They'll bury you alive. Promise me you'll stop." But I couldn't promise. I couldn't simply erase what had happened. Not after everything. Not after feeling that hand pull me from the well, hearing my name called lovingly for the first time. So I lowered my voice and said, "Mom." In the dream, he called me. He said I'm his. Tears welled in her eyes. She covered my mouth with her hand and whispered, "Never say that again. Not here. Not to anyone." But something in her eyes betrayed what her words were trying to hide. She knew I was telling the truth. That night, lying on the same rug where I'd so often cried alone, I heard my mother sobbing softly from across the room. And there in the darkness, I whispered, "Jesus, I don't understand everything, but I want you. Please don't leave me." And for the first time, I fell asleep without fear of the dark. But at dawn, someone's heavy fist pounded on the door, pounding hard. Angry voices echoed outside, words spat like fire. Then I heard my uncle's voice, roaring like thunder. "Yusuf, come out now, we know what you've done." My heart raced. My mother froze, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. "Don't say anything, don't breathe." But the door lock burst. They broke in. My uncle was the first to enter, followed by my cousins. His eyes burned like embers. He held my phone, the cracked screen still displaying the testimony of a man I'd watched the night before. The name of Jesus flashed across the screen like a sentence. He threw the device to the floor, the crash louder than any scream. "Is it true?" he shouted. "You have brought misfortune to this house. You are following the lies of the Western whore." I tried to respond, but my throat closed. My mother fell to her knees begging, "Please, he's just a boy. He's confused, he doesn't know what he's doing." But I knew exactly what I was doing. They dragged me outside. The neighbors began to gather. The village imam was already there, standing at the edge of the courtyard, his robe blowing in the wind. His face was a statue of contempt. He raised his hand and declared before everyone, "Yusuf, son of Rashid, has defiled this community. He dares to invoke the name of Isa not as a prophet but as God. He's an apostate, and you all know the punishment." People whispered, some spat on the ground, others just looked away. My uncle pushed me away. I fell to my knees, dust rising, the taste of blood in my mouth. He leaned closer and whispered in disgust, "Recite the Shahada now. Deny this lie or this will be your last day." The Imam added, "This boy has desecrated even his own father's grave. May he repent or accept death." I looked around and saw faces I'd grown up with. Men who'd given me bread on feast days. Now they stared at me as if I were a plague. Then I saw my mother. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "Please, Yusuf, just say it. Say it now." But I couldn't. Deep within the shame and pain, I heard a different voice. A voice that didn't accuse me. A voice that said, "You are mine." I stood up slowly. The dust clung to me. My legs trembled. But my voice was steady. I can't deny it. I saw him. The man in white. He called me by name. Now I belonged to him. The courtyard was silent for a second that felt like an eternity. Then the scream started again. And before I could protect myself, my uncle's fist connected with my face with such force that everything spun. Pain exploded like stars, but even that didn't make me back down. I was led to the center of the courtyard, the Imam's words cutting through the air like blades. "Stone him. If he doesn't repent, stone him." Hands began to search for stones in the crowd. Everything grew heavy, suffocating, damp with the smell of judgment. Blood dripped from my mouth, dripping onto the dry ground. All I was left with was the desperate cry, "Jesus, if you are real, don't abandon me now, please." The world seemed to hesitate. The silence stretched, dense and somehow different. The stones still hovered, but the fury already trembled. My uncle raised the stone above my head, his voice hoarse, "Say the words, deny him or die now." But my soul had already made its choice. I stared at him, my voice low, firm. "I will never deny him." The stone remained aloft. The world froze. Then a shout arose, "Stop!" It was my cousin Hamza, now older, his face aflame with justice. "Let him speak," he cried in a trembling voice. For a moment they hesitated, but he stepped closer, pushing the crowd back. My uncle dropped the stone and instead of striking, grabbed my neck in disgust. "This traitor is not my nephew, he is cursed." The Imam raised his voice coldly. "From now on, Yusuf bin Rashid does not exist. His name is broken. He is not a son, not a brother, not a Muslim. He is an apostate. He is dead." The word cut me deeper than any stone. Dead. Forgotten. My chant had killed me. I was thrown to the ground like a broken object. I saw my mother trembling, reaching out, pain and fear fighting in her eyes, but the Imam's fierce gaze made her retreat. She turned and left me. That was when I truly lost her. I wanted to plead for her, but the voice didn't come. She too was trapped by the evil that claimed to be merciful. That night they drove me from the village. In the cold dust of the road, I walked with nothing. No bread, no name. In the darkness, the voices still echoed. Apostate, cursed, forgotten. Until finally, my legs gave out no more. I collapsed at the edge of town, exhausted, with no embrace left in the world. And then, in the silence of my rejection, I heard that soft voice from the dream again. "You are mine." It wasn't the Imam nor the uncle. It was another presence. In the days that followed, I wandered the alleys, slept under broken walls, hiding my face from the world. Jets of people passed me by, indifferent. One night, a dog curled up nearby. I thought at least it didn't despise me. Hunger crushed me. Shame consumed me. Even so, I whispered with all my remaining strength, "Jesus, please don't leave me." Then amidst all the filth of the gutter, he appeared to me again. One morning, a man appeared. He bent down with work-calloused hands, but his eyes held something I'd never seen before. He said, "Your name isn't traitor, much less cursed. You are Yusuf." My chest shook so hard I thought it would shatter. "How do you know my name?" I asked, astonished. He smiled with a peace that disarmed the darkness. "The Lord spoke of you to us. Come with me." He led me through narrow streets to a hidden, almost forgotten door. Behind it, a small room with cracked walls where weary faces gathered. Men, women. and even a child sleeping on the floor. A woman sang softly like a lullaby, as the room filled with a calm that seemed magical. They began to pray, not in Arabic, not automatically, but in whispers full of life and hope. They opened a book that was not the Quran but the Bible. One man read aloud, "Though my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will take me up." Psalm 27:10. Those words struck me like a thunderbolt. My father had abandoned me. My mother had walked away. But here, in that place, was a God who had not. Tears blinded me. I fell to my knees, weeping not from shame but from relief. The relief of finally being seen, accepted. For the first time I felt arms wrap around me without judgment, without fear, without demanding anything in return. They called me brother, and that word shattered everything inside me. Because even though I had lost my family, I found a new lineage there. But peace never lasts long. One night, as we sang softly in that refuge, the door was flung open. Shouts, heavy boots, armed men burst in. "Where is the apostate?" Their eyes scanned the room, fingers poised to pull the trigger. My chest froze. I knew they were talking about me. A gun was pointed straight at my heart. I could barely breathe, my heart pounding like a drum trapped in a cage. They kicked mats, scattered papers on the floor, shouting, "Where is Yusuf bin Rashid?" Silence fell. No one denounced me. But the moment was mine. Slowly I stood up, legs shaking. My voice faltered, but it came out. "I am Yusuf." A sigh rippled through the room. The rifle rose higher, my finger on the trigger, but something inside me shifted. The same feeling from the dream returned. I was no longer a slave to fear, nor to the curses hurled at me. They dragged me into the courtyard, where the Imam and my uncle were already waiting. His eyes burned with rage. The Imam advanced, his voice hard as stone. "You defy Allah. You despise your father's name. You shame your lineage. Why do you persist in this damned Aisa?" I swallowed hard. The crowd whispered, waiting for me to break. But my voice rose, stronger than I imagined it could. "You used the name of Allah to shame me. You distorted God's words to destroy me. But I have found the one who heals me, who calls me son, not slave." My uncle spat in my face. "You are filthy. You are not of my blood." I wiped away the saliva, quietly saying, "Then I am his." The Imam raised his staff and decreed, "From today on, Yusuf is dead. His name has been erased. He is a kafir. He is nothing." But I felt no fear. I looked at them and replied, "Yes, Yusuf is dead, but in Christ I live." The crowd erupted in screams, cursing, crying, shock. They pushed me, they beat me, but I was unharmed inside. I fell to my knees on the ground, my chest heavy, blood dripping from my lips. In the midst of the chaos, a brother from the underground church leaned over me, his low voice like a lifeline. "Yusuf, are you ready to be baptized?" My vision blurred, but I managed to nod even through the pain. "Yes, I'm ready." That night, under the cover of darkness, they led me to a hidden place, a cramped room where a cracked basin filled with water stood. The others joined in, singing softly so no one could hear. My body ached from the beating, but my soul felt lighter than ever. One of the brothers placed a firm hand on my shoulder and said, "Yusuf, based on your confession of faith, we baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." I stepped into the cold water, biting against my aching bruises. They submerged me completely, and for a moment I felt like I was dying. But when I emerged, gasping for breath, it was as if I were breathing for the first time in my life. The dirt, the shame, the curses, all were gone. The water ran down my face like tears I no longer needed to hold back. I wept openly, my arms raised to the sky. "I am yours, Jesus, forever yours." My new brothers hugged me affectionately, but I knew that to my old family I was already dead. Would they one day try to kill me again? The water still ran coldly down my skin, sharp, alive, but inside me something else burned, an unwavering flame. I was no longer that boy broken by his father. I had found life, true life, in Jesus.